I've been married to Emma for 4 years. Although we're still relatively new to marriage, we dated for 2 years before tying the knot. Our relationship always felt solid, with no signs of trouble. We built a foundation of trust and love during those early days, and I believed we had something genuine. I'm 30 and Emma is 26. What happened on July 4th changed the way I see her and us. But before I share what happened that day, let me explain the events leading up to it. About a week before the holiday, Emma mentioned that her close friend Lily had invited us to her annual Independence Day party. Normally, we'd arranged for our trusted babysitter to watch over our 3-year-old son Ethan. Emma assured me she had already contacted the sitter, but unfortunately, the sitter wasn't available because of her busy schedule. I was a little disappointed. Finding time for just the two of us had become rare since Ethan was born, but I didn't want to make a fuss. Emma suggested I stay home with Ethan while she went to the party alone. She seemed really excited, so I agreed, even though I felt a pang of unease. You see, Lily is younger, only 23, and lives a carefree, single lifestyle. While I've never tried to control Emma or her friendships, I've always thought Lily might not be the best influence. Still, I wanted Emma to enjoy herself, so I set my doubts aside. On the morning of July 4th, I had an idea. What if I offered our babysitter a higher rate? Maybe she'd reconsider, and then Emma and I could both attend the party. It felt like a win-win. Ethan would be cared for, and Emma would get to spend time with me at the celebration. Since Emma usually handled the babysitting arrangements, I didn't have the sitter's contact information. I decided to look through Emma's phone to find the number. Once I found it, I called and explained the situation, hoping to convince the sitter to change her mind. What happened next left me stunned. When I mentioned the date and asked if she could reconsider, the sitter sounded puzzled. After a moment of silence, she said, "This is the first I'm hearing about July 4th. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I asked if Emma had contacted her at all. She firmly denied it, saying she hadn't received any calls or messages about that day. Trying to play it cool despite my racing thoughts, I quickly made up a story, saying Emma might have asked a family member to help instead. But I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. Why would Emma lie? What possible reason could she have for making up a story about the babysitter? I thanked the babysitter and arranged for her to come over at 10 p.m. I made one last request, asking her not to mention anything about this arrangement to my wife. I needed time to process everything and decide what to do next. My wife had told me she'd be leaving for the party around 8 p.m., so I planned for the babysitter to arrive after she was gone. By then, a nagging suspicion had started to take root, though I couldn't fully articulate what I feared the most. I had initially planned a surprise evening outing for my wife, but now that plan seemed irrelevant. As I finalized the arrangements with the sitter, she casually mentioned that my wife had tried to book her for the same time and date earlier. I quickly covered by saying we both thought the evening might be canceled, but had decided to go ahead with it after all. Around 8 p.m., my wife left. I waited for the babysitter, who arrived punctually, and once everything was in order, I decided to head to the party myself. I wasn't entirely sure if my wife would be there or if she had gone somewhere else. When I arrived, her friend greeted me warmly and immediately called her over. My wife's reaction to seeing me was far from what I expected. It wasn't just shock, it was disbelief. In the few hours since she left home, she already seemed visibly intoxicated. Her eyes were red, her demeanor distant, and her tone cold as she repeatedly asked why I was there and who was watching our child. I reassured her that the babysitter was taking care of everything and explained that I had come to spend the evening with her, enjoy the party, and watch the fireworks together. The party was small, with 15 to 20 people crammed into the house. One thing stood out immediately: the skewed gender ratio. There were nearly twice as many men as women. Most of the guests were mingling or playing games, including a lively round of truth or dare. As I tried to settle in, my wife's behavior grew more agitated. She seemed restless, avoided eye contact, and eventually insisted we leave. Her abruptness felt strange, raising an internal alarm that she might be hiding something. I told her we'd leave soon, but wanted to grab a drink first and get a feel for the party. In the kitchen, I struck up a casual conversation with one of the men. After a brief introduction, I asked if he was enjoying himself, and he responded positively. Trying to understand more about the atmosphere, I casually mentioned my interest in meeting some of the women at the party. I pointed to the guests one by one, and he candidly shared who was in a relationship and who seemed open to meeting someone new. That seemingly innocent conversation turned out to be far more revealing than I had anticipated. As we chatted, he pointed to my wife in the crowd and casually commented on how beautiful she was. Intrigued but trying to keep my emotions in check, I pressed him for more details. What he said next shattered my heart. He mentioned that she was off limits because she was involved with a mutual friend of his that I encouraged him to elaborate. He shared how my wife had met this man at a concert and that their relationship had since turned intimate. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, especially when I realized the timeline matched perfectly with an event we had both attended just a month ago. I vividly remembered that night. We had been together most of the time, except when she insisted on getting snacks alone. She had been gone for an unusually long time, but I brushed it off, assuming there was a long line or that she had taken a restroom break. Since then, there had been small but noticeable changes in her behavior. Frequent absences from home, an impromptu trip out of town. Pieces of the puzzle started falling into place, and the picture they painted was devastating. As the stranger continued to talk, he described my wife with a certain arrogance, almost as if he were boasting about her like a prize his friend had won. The casual indifference in his tone made my blood boil. Moments later, my wife's friend joined the conversation. She clearly sensed where it was headed, and her evasiveness only confirmed her complicity in the deception. I excused myself and asked my wife's friend where she was. She suggested I check the patio. That's where I found my wife, deep in what seemed like an intense conversation with a man. Her body language betrayed her. She was either pleading or trying to justify something. I approached them calmly but firmly, introducing myself to the man as her husband. My wife immediately tried to pull me away, urging me to leave the party. I shook off her hand, my anger barely restrained, and told her she was free to leave. I intended to have a word with her companion. Turning to him, I asked a straightforward question. Did you know my wife was married when you got involved with her? My tone carried enough weight to make him hesitate. I wasn't looking to start a fight, but I wanted answers. My imposing demeanor had the desired effect, unsettling both of them. My wife grew visibly anxious, trying to apologize and diffuse the situation, but I wasn't having it. The man, cornered and clearly nervous, stammered out an apology. He claimed he had no idea she was married when they first started seeing each other. I pressed him further, asking how many times they had been together. His hesitant answer only confirmed what I already knew. Satisfied that I had the truth, I wished him a good night, turned on my heel, and left the party. I got into my car, drove home, and told my wife in no uncertain terms that I wanted a divorce. Her pleas and apologies fell on deaf ears. I packed a bag and checked into a hotel, where I now sit, pouring my thoughts onto this page in an attempt to make sense of it all. The betrayal has left me hollow, physically sick, and unsure what steps to take next. Divorce is uncharted territory for me, and the thought of co-parenting is daunting. I didn't grow up in a household like that. What I do know is that I can't continue in this marriage. My trust has been shattered beyond repair. As I write this, I'm contemplating my next moves, knowing I need to prioritize my mental health and well-being. For now, I'm navigating the storm, unsure of what lies ahead, but resolute in my decision to move forward.